protect itself?
No worries.
Okay, good. I'll edit it perfectly.
So basically, so it's not all prison planet. There are forces on this planet to protect us from doing harm when we go to places where the veil is thin.
Oh yeah.
Or we want to activate ourselves beyond our capacity to activate ourselves without any mentoring or any shaman.
Yeah, absolutely. I do tell people, I say, look, insanity is an option. You know, if people are developing themselves or they enter into these places of higher consciousness, it's not always a guarantee that you're going to have this enlightening experience. You go, oh, I had this wonderful, beautiful, enlightening experience. Like, it can be terrifying, it can be shocking, it can split the consciousness and the psyche, and insanity becomes a complete option. So if you want to avoid people, you know, going into an insane place, you want to make sure that they're ready.
Yeah.
My understanding of how the mystery schools worked in ancient Egypt, it wasn't so much that you had to train these adepts to be able to leave their bodies and go out into the cosmos. It was so that they'd come back, right? You had to train them so they'd be disciplined enough to go out and experience this higher consciousness, and instead of going, oh my God, this is so much cooler, I don't ever want to go back there, you trained them so they're like, oh, I'm supposed to take this and go back to my body and, you know, ground it out somehow.
Because many want to leave.
Oh, yeah.
Even in the esoteric industry, you want to just all crystalline, no grounding, and all out.
Oh, yeah. Anytime, I mean, I've ever experienced one of those really higher dimensional states, like, I don't really want to come back. I mean, it's like, well, this is so much cooler here. Why would I want to come back? But it's that act of understanding, well, if I don't come back, then I quit my job. I quit why I'm here.
Well, that defeats the purpose of you being here.
Right, exactly.
Keep saying that you want to, as they say, as in heaven, so on earth, see this as a alchemical equation. It says you want to bring that state here,
right,
to make that God Elohim within the body. You want to, right, within the Gallagher code, you want to embody that in the physical vessel.
Absolutely.
And not leave. Yes, it looks fantastic. I mean, I've seen fantastic realms and fantastic worlds, inexhaustible vessels.
Yeah.
Love is throughout the planet.
Yeah.
Everybody communicates in harmony, of course.
Yeah, that's that feels great. And when you come back here, it's like, oh, this hurts. And this feels uncomfortable.
It's physical.
And,
not everybody understands you.
It's slow and like moving through mud. And it's difficult. So
some African tales say that we are under the spell of Kingu since the Draconian, Anunnaki, Nuburian oppressors, because we swore an oath to serve these, you can say, lesser gods that were technically advanced. Do you think that this is part of the spell programming, that many of us either ignore ships in the sky or blatantly can't see it?
I think it's simpler than that. I think it's evolutionary. I think that some people are on a precipice of evolution to be able to be ready to understand that, and other people are in a place of their own evolution where they're not ready to understand that.
So how would you explain cognitive dissonance? When you explain something to somebody and they're really not in frequency, even cellular, to even understand, to begin understanding what you're trying to tell them. What is that?
Cognitive dissonance can be a lot of different things. What it often comes down to is belief, what a person wants to believe to be true. And if a person wants a certain thing to be true, and you tell them, even with the most amazing truth, that no, this other thing is true, the cognitive dissonance of, nope, I'm going to ignore that, is because they want to believe a certain thing is true, and you're telling them that that's not true. A person, in order to not experience cognitive dissonance, has to have an open mind. You have to be willing to say, well, this is how I understand it, but if I'm going to have an open mind, I have to be willing to believe that how I understand it can be completely rewritten by other knowledge and other information. A lot of people get stuck in this place of, this is how I understand it, therefore this is how it must be, and anyone who comes along to tell me differently, I'm going to reject or tell them that they're wrong. That's cognitive dissonance. So cognitive dissonance at its heart is closed-mindedness. And it's an unwillingness to change your belief on something because you don't want to grow up from it. And a good example of that is like, look, when someone's 5-6 years old, you have this limited understanding of what the world is, how things operate. And if we all stayed in cognitive dissonance as 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds, every time someone would teach us something more advanced or more knowledgeable about the way the world works and we just reject it, we'd all stay like 5-year-olds. But it's that process as you're 5, 7, 9, that someone comes along and says, well, I know you thought it was that way when you were 5, but it's actually this way. And then when you accept, oh, maybe it's a little more complicated than that, it's that willingness to have an open mind and understand that the way you understood it before is not the fullest, most amazing way that you can understand it. And it's when people get locked into well, I'm an adult now, I understand how it all works, I don't need someone else to come along and tell me that it's different. That's when cognitive dissonance really locks in, because it's the refusal to admit that you just might not have understood it perfectly before, and there's another way to understand it. People really in their cognitive dissonance space think they got it, they understand it, and anyone else who comes along and wants to change their mind is wrong. So it's really at its heart closed-mindedness. And an unwillingness to accept that the way you learned about it before is just not as complete as the way that it is, and that there's always another step of understanding something more fully and more completely than the way you did before. So when people just can't accept that there's always more to learn, then they get locked into cognitive dissonance.
Is that like a conditioning?
I think it's social evolution. It's social psychological evolution. Mm-hmm. So people often get locked into that because of social psychological belief systems. So people who find themselves in a social psychological venue of belief with a group of people who this is the way we believe, this is true, this is the social psychological acceptance within this group, and then they get locked into that place, because if they step outside of that, they will be rejected by their social psychological group, which a lot of people don't want to be rejected by their social psychological group, so they stay there instead of going, well, maybe my social psychological group has it wrong. Maybe there's actually a bigger, better understanding of this for me to understand. A person who can go there is still in growth.
Yeah.
Someone who's locked in is like, nope, my social psychological group is, we've got it right, we've got it figured out. There's no more growth, there's no more understanding beyond this. Then that's again locked into a place of cognitive dissonance, because you're not willing to go beyond whatever your social psychological group is.
And it takes
so it's conditioning,
yeah.
And it's the social psychological understanding that when you're locked into a group that believes a certain way, you want to stay with that group, otherwise you'll be ostracized from the group. There are experiments that they've done, with rhesus monkeys in the lab that show that, like one of my favorites is they hang a banana that's electrified. So monkey comes up and grabs it, they get a shock from the banana. And as they release, monkeys into this cage, they all grab the banana, they get shocked by the banana. And then it gets to a point where when a new monkey gets introduced into the group and they try to reach for the banana, the other monkeys attack it and basically say, no, you can't grab that banana. We all understand that the banana is bad, so before you even touch the banana, we're going to attack you and tell you that you need to conform to our social psychological understanding that the banana is bad before you even have a personal experience of touching the banana. So there's a primal biological sense that wants to keep us locked into those social psychological groups. So again, I think it's evolution. If you're in a state of where you're willing to continue to evolve and grow, you'll move beyond that. If you're locked into that social psychological, evolutionary, biological place, then you don't want to get attacked by your other members of your social psychological group, so you don't want to reach for the banana. You would rather say, oh, the banana's bad. I agree with you that the banana's bad. I'm not going to, well, maybe the banana's a good thing. You're not going to challenge that because you don't want to go against the social psychological group, because in some ways it comes down to physical violence. It comes down to, the group is willing to put a certain amount of physical violent pressure on you to do what the group says. And if you don't, then there are all of these physical, emotional, psychological, violent threats to behave that way or be completely ostracized from the group. And a lot of people simply don't want to be ostracized.
Yeah, because
from
they have their survival, the bread you can get from the neighbor or friends you have, things in exchange, all of that stops.
Yeah.
They isolate you. I had 3 circles of friends within my lifetime. They literally banned me when I dared to go philosophical and more. There's more to than what you see. There are realms that we haven't even tapped into that others can experience. And we always debating about, I had the experience and you debating me that I didn't have it because you didn't have the experience. Because by telepathy we're not linked yet. But here's an interesting thing that I learned: what the Nazis did in Germany with to explain how we were conditioned to not see multidimensional anymore, is they took worms, like the ones that in the soil. I don't know, what would you call them? Earthworms, and they would put them in a solution of some salt water, and they would turn on a light, and every time they would turn on the light, they would shock the water with like 2 volts,
right,
and the worms would do this.
Right.
They would respond. So they did this with several generations, and then they picked, let's say, generation 7, and they disconnected the electric voltage, and they just from outside turned the light on, and the worms are genetically programmed
to be conditioned
to when that comes up, you shut down. So, and I think that through slavery and Anunnaki and influence, we were trained to psychically shut down because it's safer. Remember the witch hunt and all that stuff?
No, I think there's a lot of conditioning that gets locked into people's genetics, which can be changed, but it's there. And so for most people, they experience that conditioning of, don't step outside the box, don't step outside the social psychological boundary, or you'll be, harmed, physically punished, sociologically ostracized, some form of punishment that we go, I don't want that to happen. I want to feel safe and comfort, in my family social group.
So, coming back to that second part of that question of how did you, besides the things that happen to us and things disappear and interference, from the technical point of view and the experience on other planets and super soldier training, what was your goal, or what is in reality, what did you make tangible in this realm from this other realm? What can you reverse engineer or bring back? Some people would ask that, what do you have?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, anything that I have sufficient memory of how it functions. So there are some things I understand about the holographic cellular regenerator. There are some things that I understand about, the magnetic shielding around superheated plasma from plasma rifles, rail guns, any of the technology that I had a direct connection with or interaction with, and managed to talk to technicians and get a little understanding of, or get to look under the hood.
So there's things you can do in the physical.
Absolutely, because I remember them well enough to say, okay, if I talk to an engineer and explain what I remember, could that engineer replicate that? And my chief engineer in the project that we're working on, we've talked about a lot of these things, and I've said, okay, here's what I remember about this device, here's what I remember about this machine. Does that make sense to you in a point of physics or engineering, and how we could replicate that? And most of the time when we have these conversations, he's like, oh yeah, I know what you mean by that. He can take the translation of what I'm explaining, and he has the background in physics and engineering to go, oh, here's how that works. But it takes enough of an understanding of the fundamentals that I can remember to be able to translate that to someone who understands the mathematical equations in engineering and physics to actually replicate something like that physically.
So basically, so what little things in life happen to you physically? Like we had this talk off camera. You said that sometimes they can erase messages or put your phone in a loop. Like there's interference going on. What have you experienced that literally where you're like, this does not make any sense right now?
Oh gosh. So about half the time that I do interviews with people, radio, or usually with the radio ones or the internet ones, there's about half the time there's a technical interference that no one can understand. I've had people who've had their entire control boards taken over so that the phone numbers that they're looking at in the line all appear to be the exact same phone numbers, so they don't know where I'm on what line or whoever else is on what line. The first interview that I did with Dr. Michael Sala, which is about 5.5 hours worth that we did over several days, the first one that we did, when he went back to look at the files, all the audio had been deleted, so we had to do it all over again to do that again. Recently, a few months back, I was at a conference in Toronto and had my phone with me. It was functioning on Saturday night. Sunday morning, it was just going into a loop cycle that wouldn't turn on again. And when I pulled my SD card out to try and recover the contact information, the entire SD card had been deleted. The whole thing had been erased. There was nothing on it.
So what do you think the purpose of these interference companies or agencies, what are they trying to do? Slow you down?
Yeah, mostly just slow me down. And I consider them slightly annoying, like if I really say, like, really that's the best you can do, like that's not going to stop me. That's really just going to slow my process down or make me have to take more time to do this or that. So I get the feeling that those agencies or the teams with those agencies that are doing those jobs, their job isn't to like completely shut me down and stop me from functioning. Otherwise, they would be trying to do something that was a lot more restrictive than what they're doing. I think it's just more of let's slow this process down, let's monkey wrench it a little, let's not make it as easy and simple as it should be. And I think in some cases it's harassment. So some people respond to harassment by going like, okay, you're going to harass me, then I'm not going to deal with this anymore. A guy by the name of Jason Rice, who did an interview for Gaia for Cosmic Disclosure, who also took a polygraph and passed. He experienced some harassment. Like somebody came, walked up to him in the middle of the street and said something to him that made him get a little scared and sent him an email. He has disappeared off the face of the earth and doesn't answer emails and phone calls from anybody more because he got scared from the intimidation. So they're presuming that some people, they intimidate a little and put a little pressure on them and go, oh, okay, I'm outie, and then back out and then stop. I'm obviously harder to intimidate than that, but some people can be intimidated more easily. So I think in some cases they're just rolling the dice and saying, well, if this is a person that we can intimidate, let's put a little intimidation on them and then maybe they'll back out. And if
I guess people like you and I, it's a little bit difficult because we're like sentinels. We're like watch, like microchip card that's placed in a card, in a chip missing,
right,
specifically, or out of the case missing, right. And we're going, okay,
yeah, right,
like
right.
Real stupid, like we like really don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
But we see it, and I think that the interference would be difficult with people, and I tell people like this: protect yourself with awareness.
Right.
They can come in where you're unconscious. I felt like
Absolutely.
when you don't pay attention, that's where they come in.
Yeah.
When you, let's say 7 miles down the road, MIB would not approach you,
right,
because you see them coming.
Right.
And I believe, I don't know if people are hacked or they have unconscious parts of themselves where they know they have access. What do you think?
Either way, it can happen. Either way, I think. I think there's a number of technologies and a number of avenues to manipulate, control, coerce people, and depending on where someone's weaknesses are, maybe the easiest or best way that it is to control, manipulate, or influence that person. And some people are just more difficult to manipulate, coerce, or influence.
So even these extraterrestrials or other agencies, I mean, Dr. Greer says it's the bad part on Earth is more the human covert operations than ETs interfering. That's what he believes.
I'd say that's mostly true. I'd say that's probably mostly true, yeah.
So aren't these people spiritually aware that also there are spiritual laws, there's a price for them interfering in our natural evolution?
I think some of them might be, but some of them might not care.
So they're just ignorant. They just really don't care what the consequence is.
I don't know that ignorant is the right word. I think some people choose the light path and some people choose the dark path. And when you choose the dark path, you maybe understand that there are some long-term consequences, but you continue to choose the short-term gains. That's one of the things that draws people into the dark path, is short-term gains over understanding what the long-term consequences of something are. And people who are focused on that short-term gain rather than understanding long-term consequences will do all kinds of things that may be going to sabotage or harm them later on down the road, but they just think, nope, short-term gain, that's what I'm about, the short-term gain. So it's a mentality, and I think that has a lot to do with dark side, light side choosing for people. So I wouldn't call them ignorant. I would just say that they're choosing that short-term gain because as a person who's on the path of the dark side, they think that's what's going to get them what they want. And again, it may in the short term, but it's not going to get them what they want in the long term.
Shortcuts never work.
Yeah.
So what is for you the fascinating part, having integrated that you have had a second life, or have, like many of us have, what have you learned how we communicate with other species, you know? Because we fantasize about it, but there's actually a real deal.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, there might be, not that I have any experience with that, beings like mantids that are not hostile, but they look hostile to us because we say, ooh, it's an insectoid, but they might not be evil, they just might be amoral because they're in a different state of consciousness. That doesn't mean they're bad. So what's your experience with communicating with different races?
I think my overall experience, my takeaway from that is just that, again, let's use the experience of when you're 5 or 7 or 9. That, you know, when you're 5, your understanding of the world is this big, and as you get older, that understanding of the world that you live in, the universe,
complexity,
it gets bigger and bigger, and you have this awareness of how big it is. And then, sort of as a terrestrial adult, you kind of get this, okay, I understand everything now, this is it. But then once you step outside of that, and all of a sudden you've communicated, you've sat across the table with extraterrestrials, you've talked about trade agreements, you've talked about their history, your history, the way they've evolved, you've evolved, that what you used to think was your full understanding of the world as a terrestrial adult opens up even farther. So my takeaway from that is just the expansive understanding of where we are in the universe and where we're going in the universe, and seeing the bigger picture instead of just seeing, well, okay, I understand the world I live in. Here's the big picture of the world I live in. Well, the galaxy I live in is an even bigger picture, and the universe I live in is an even bigger picture. And so just having that bigger picture of awareness and understanding that you never go back from. You know, I could never roll back my brain and say, okay, enough of that, I'm going to go back. This is how I understand the world, period. This is it. I could never go back to that. So
there's no way back once your mind is expanded.
It's like a balloon that doesn't stretch back.
That makes sense.
Once it's expanded, and there's no shrinking down of that balloon into a smaller size anymore. You just have a bigger understanding of the way the universe works. So I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Well, me neither. So that inspires me to ask you what your take is on, when I'm on a ship, I'm always made aware of, you can ask us anything, but every knowledge that we'll give you with what permission we have to give you, are you sure you're ready to hear it?
Right.
Because that alters your perception, and also will alter decisions you will make in the future. Not bad, but it's going to be like, holy shit, like, you want to take that 15-footer right now? Or you're okay with a 2-footer and with a semi-board? Right. So why are they so cautious with what they give us?
Well, any being who understands long-term consequences and understands that the decisions that you make with the information that you take will affect those long-term consequences will want to understand and see that, okay, if we gave you all the information that we could possibly give you, it would alter the way that you see the future and the way that you do everything from this point forward, that would probably mess up the timeline that you're supposed to be on, that would get the most growth for you and your planet and your species. So there's a sweet spot, as it were, of what the maximum amount of growth and potential that you might get from that. You overwhelm someone with information, and they may just sit down on the couch and go, I'm overwhelmed. I think I know too much to do anything, or I know too much to make this choice or do that choice, or why would I bother to do that when I understand 9 steps, beyond that. Sometimes just understanding the next 3 steps in front of you is enough to keep you going and going and going, instead of seeing 20 steps ahead and go, well, why am I going to bother then? If this, what's going to happen here doesn't really matter 20 steps ahead, why should I even bother? So giving someone too much information can cause them to be inactive, can cause them to freeze and go, oh, I have too much information, I don't know what to do anymore. So giving that getting that sweet spot of the correct amount of information so that someone can go forward and advance themselves, their species, or their planet in the best way possible. That's what you want to give someone. You don't want to give them too little, that they're like, what do I do? You don't want to give them too much, it's like, why bother? You want to give them that right amount so that they do something with it and add it to the collective consciousness, add it to the collective understanding, the collective experience.
Spoon feeding without, having a full meal for an infant that can't even take it in like that.
Yeah, you don't want to overwhelm people, because if you overwhelm them, then they don't do anything.
So that's also another thing. So what do you think about spiritual people that's they run around with the badge? Yeah, I had 70 ayahuasca trips, I don't need to do anything. I believe they're stuck in theoretical potential.
Yes. So vision is the first real psionic ability that we get, the ability to see things, the ability to see down the road. But vision isn't action. Just because you can see a potential or see a way down the road doesn't mean you've done anything with it.
Yeah.
So just because you see all these potentials or see all these paths down the road doesn't mean you've done anything, doesn't mean you've walked that path at all. You're just seeing the potentials. So someone who sees those potentials and makes the mistake that vision is action, then they're like, well, I've seen this, I've seen that, what else is there for me? And it's like, well, how about you do some shit? How about instead of just envisioning, this place down the road, how about you take some steps?
Some action steps.
What I often relay to my students in its metaphorical sense, when we're trying to do something psionically with our mind, I make a metaphor about physical exercise or, physical, weightlifting or something that's like, look, you don't get better at something by sitting down on the couch and imagining lifting weights or doing jumping jacks. You got to get up off your ass and do jumping jacks. So mentally, just having that vision, you're not doing anything, just having vision. I mean, congratulations, you've made the step of opening up your vision. Great job.
Yeah.
But if you're not doing anything with that, then you're just sitting on the couch envisioning these things happening instead of getting off your butt and actually doing the exercise mentally, psionically to develop those skills and those abilities. There's so many different things that we have to develop. So precognition, telekinesis, pyrokinesis, levitation, all of these sort of manifesting abilities, people often see the vision of, well, I could do that, I can do that. It's like, great, what are you doing to get there? I know some people who can do some sort of parlor trick telekinesis, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. You can move a straw on the table. Can you move a bowling ball? No? Okay, then why aren't you training your mind? Why aren't you trying to push yourself farther to get to a more advanced state instead of just having the vision of, well, I could do this, or I could do that, or in this other state I could do that, or in this future state I can do that. And it's like, great, but where are you now, and what are you doing with that? And if the answer is you're not really working at getting better and better and better at those skills, and I mean, remote viewing, okay, great, you can remote view. How good are you at it? Are you practicing? Are you having someone put random objects in a box for you on a daily basis for you to remote view and look at? Are you getting them 100% of the time, every day, all the time? Well, then you can do better. So wherever you think you are isn't good enough. Wherever you think you are is not the top of the scale. Wherever you think you are is not the maximum you can achieve. So wherever you are is just a place of, okay, I'm here, that's good, I should be doing more. I should be training for more. I should be trying to achieve a higher state of awareness, a higher ability sense of this thing that I'm doing. If I'm being a better remote viewer, I should get better and better and better at it. If I'm able to move some small objects telekinetically, I should be working on that every day to move larger objects. Whatever the ability or the skill set that someone's focusing on never be satisfied that where you're at is the top of the scale where you can go. Keep going farther, 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 stronger, 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 until, you know, you're doing something that's really noteworthy. So I think that's what that is. I think it's the ability to see the far off vision and presume that because you're seeing that far off vision that you've accomplished something. You haven't. You've just opened up an eye that can see farther.
You looked at a potential.
Yeah, like make it happen. Do it. Like get off your butt and make it happen. Otherwise, you're just, you know, you're just talking. You're an armchair quarterback, you know. You're sitting on the couch telling people what they should do and, you know, how they should be done. And get off the couch and do it yourself. Make it happen.